Today on the Next, our guest is Colin Wilson. Colin is a former professional ice hockey player, a forward. He played 11 seasons in the NHL for the Nashville Predators and Colorado Avalanche. He was drafted 7th overall by the Predators in the 2008 NHL entry draft. He's also the son of a former NHL player and the grandson of a former NHL player. So hockey is literally in his blood. Now, I was excited for this one because one of the things that I've been exploring is that clearly when hockey is quote unquote in your blood, nature plays a role in that, right? Genetics passed down from generation to generation, and nature is not something that can be controlled. But nurture also has a role, right? You have to imagine that growing up surrounded by people that have played hockey at the highest levels. And by the way, this isn't just a hockey thing. This is any sport or any craft for that matter. But having those kinds of role models and that kind of perspective at the dinner table growing up goes a long way on your development path. And so one of the things I've been looking at is for those that didn't grow up with that kind of access but aspire to play the game at the highest levels or at least to reach their fullest form in the sport, could you package that type of insight and make it accessible to everybody else? Now, we have a great discussion in this episode about Colin's path in the sport, what type of guidance he got from his dad and his grandfather and his family along the way, how self-directed he was, and at what point he took the reins with his own journey. And we also talk about lessons learned with the benefit of hindsight, looking backwards, what things he would change, the state of the sport today, where it's going, how it's different than when he was growing up, and what path he might see for himself and for his daughter and family in the game looking forwards. Colin, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I'm just pouring a healthy soda here as I'm getting going in my sweaty running clothes too, so unprofessional on a number of different levels. But I'm talking to a hockey guy, so I feel like hopefully that's okay. More okay than if I was talking to an investment banker or something.
Yes, I've been there.
Well, hey, I really appreciate you making the time. It's a little daunting to have this be one of the earliest hockey discussions. I feel like I'm jumping right to the Black Diamond here. But we chatted offline, and we have a lot to talk about. And you just have so much experience that's relevant for the kinds of things that I'm thinking about. So I'm just so grateful for you making the time to share it with me and share it with listeners as well.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, yeah, as per our conversation offline that ended up leading to this, it seems as though we have a few things that are parallel in line with each other. So happy to have the conversation.
Well, for starters, Colin, and by the way, I've listened to some pods where you have your buddies on there, and I know they call you Willie. What should I call you? I'm like setting myself up for rejection here, but I'm going for it.
Colin or Willie, they're
okay.
interchangeable. So, yeah.
I'll stick with Colin.
All right.
But maybe talk a bit about your time in the NHL, but also how you entered the sport, right? Because I know you come from I think you're third generation NHLer?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd just be interesting for me to hear both, for listeners, a bit on your time in the league, but then to go back in time and look at how you came to find the sport in the first place, because I think that's really interesting just in terms of nature and nurture and a bunch of stuff that I'm kind of trying to pressure test and figure out so that I don't end up building something that with false assumptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms, I guess I'll start from more so the beginning, entering the game, but it was, I don't know, if you're from Winnipeg, you play hockey, as you mentioned. I'm a third generation NHLer, ended up being, so, my dad and grandfather had played. So, I mean, I was skating at 3 in a league before I turned 4. So it's just kind of what you did. I think back, and I think there was 2 kids who their primary sport was. One was basketball, one was football, and they were kind of the weird kids. Everybody just played hockey. So
did everyone start that young, Colin, or is that just what third generation, or sons and grandsons of former NHLers do.
No, I think everybody started that young. I mean, if it's mine, the ice starts freezing over in November, so you can start skating on the pond in November in Winnipeg. So, it's an activity to do and an activity to do outside. So I think, and there's a lot of pride around it in Canada, in Winnipeg where I'm from. So it's, I think everybody starts at that age. Like I know I have a niece now starting, and she started around 4 or 5. So, yeah, I think it's just part of the community. But then, yeah, as you move up, I mean, I ended up going to college. I'll kind of go through the whole stages. But my dad played Dartmouth, so he wanted me to do the college route. But entering the NHL, I mean, it really was yeah, I mean, it's a dream come true. I mean, it was very cool. Getting drafted felt like the very first step. I mean, the first draft rankings before I got drafted felt like a tiny step where I felt like, okay, I'm going to be drafted and drafted high. But no, it was great. It was very competitive. 82 games is a lot of games. The schedule is quite hard. But I've had some of the best experiences of my life and some very difficult experiences as well. But, as a whole, it was my whole 20s. Played my first game at 19, played my last at 30. So it was a good decade.
And at what point in your youth, like when you started out, was it just fun, or were you always chasing the dream?
Chasing the dream from as early as I can remember. I mean, you start having cuts. I remember my very first traveling team where you had to make, it was called the Junior Jets. And I remember that my dad telling me that they're coming out to scout me for a game. And that was at 7, I think. Ended up making the team. But I remember being very nervous for it at 7. So, I don't know. I mean, it gets competitive and it gets competitive early. I mean, I can't complain because I was just thinking about it the other day, how competitive me and all my friends were. And it certainly helped me. So, it gets, has its positives and negatives.
And at that time, was it you chasing the dream, or was it everyone around you that was also chasing their dream? Like, was that just what the kids did in Winnipeg?
Yes. So again, yeah, everybody was chasing the NHL. I mean, it was, I don't know, at least everybody around me was eating, sleeping, and dreaming, drinking, hockey. So, yeah, I mean, me and all my friends, everybody wanted to make the NHL. Everybody was very competitive with one another. We all wanted to beat each other out, and that was from 7 on. Everybody was worried about making the top team, getting more ice time, leading the league. So I think if you're from Canada, it is a very competitive landscape, and it really is one sport. So I think everybody and like parents, coaches, everybody has hockey on their mind all the time.
And back then, when the kids were coming up, and I know the game's changed a lot, which we can also talk about, but how much of it came from the kid, and how much of it came from the parents, and what was the parents' role in the development process? And I'll ask that both in general with the kids around you, but also with you specifically.
Me specifically, while I was born, I guess I was born driven and I did have this dream. I'm sure, I can't remember, I don't have memory at past a certain age, but, I'm sure that my dad, there's some subconscious wiring there, knowing that my dad was a hockey player and my grandfather was a hockey player. But no, we all tended to, we had that dream, but yeah, my dad certainly pushed me. My grandfather certainly pushed me. We took a lot of pride in it. And I think as you looked around at my friends, a lot of parents were also, they certainly all wanted their kid to make the NHL. Some took it more seriously than others. But there was definitely some battling going on. And like, if you get cut, which I actually did get cut one year, it's it's like devastating to your family almost. So it's a weird animal.
In what way did your dad and grandfather push you?
Well, I used to make jokes. So when I made the U.S. national team, so I'm from Canada, half Canadian, or pardon me, half American because I was born in Greenwich. But when I made when I made the U.S. national team, all these guys are like throwing baseballs and footballs, and and I didn't. And they're like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Well, my dad was dropped. I was working on my face-offs in the garage while you guys were doing that other stuff." So, like, that's kind of, I was 9 or 10, and we're reviewing film, getting pucks dropped for me in the garage. There was a batting cage that got turned into ice for your so you could go practice your shot. So, we'd videotape my shot, and this is with the handheld camera, and then we'd go back to my house and review my shot. So, it was quite hands-on, and my dad was my coach for the traveling teams, never my teams during the winter. Uh,
Was he still playing when you were coming up?
no, he wasn't. He had retired. Probably my earliest memory was me at around 3 years old, us finally getting to Winnipeg from his like retirement where we moved to. So yeah, he was done pretty much, but when I was a kid.
And if I had, you probably don't remember, but if I had him here to ask in those early years, uh, was it, did he have to beat you over the head to get you to do the stuff? Were you hungry to do it? Were you just doing it to make him happy? Like what was the motivation from your standpoint at the time?
I think it was a combination of things. I mean, there was I mean, I can tell there was times like where I'd be rolling my eyes at at a young age, certain things where I felt like it was going a little bit over the top. But I mean, what I was happy to do and what we did a ton was, I mean, we just go to the outdoor rink, and pass the puck around and play shinny, and that you didn't have to tell me to do anything. I'd go there and be there all day, and if my dad was there, that'd be even better. So I think that I had a decent amount of drive and motivation, and then at the same time, some of it was his own push, and so it was a combination of both, but certainly probably I had more push than other parents in my group had.
When you think back to your youth, the little guys that were standing out in your earliest years, was it the same leadership pack as you got older, or did it get turned on its head? With puberty and checking and girls and booze and whatever.
Um, it got turned on its head. I mean, I guess I'll speak with some humility, but I'll try to. So I would like, I mean, I remember up until about 13, I was always the leader in the league in points, or like if not first, second, pretty pretty easily. And then from between 12 and 15, all these other kids hit puberty. I didn't. So all of a sudden, all these kids were quite large. They surpassed me. I got cut from a team. They all made the year old, the 15 to 17-year-old team. I got left back. But those guys, they stopped growing after that, and then all of a sudden I hit, and then I grew quite a bit larger than a lot of them. But no, I mean, in my friend group also, probably my best friend growing up, he was a first rounder to the NHL. He was a goalie, and he remained, the top goalie in Winnipeg for a very long time. But no, there is a weird jockeying and positioning. But with that being said, all my friends who kind of surpassed me for those times, they were always one of the top players in Winnipeg most of the time. So,
with the benefit of hindsight, you hear people say the best kids are self-directed from the earliest age. Like they always know that they're going for it. Like anytime you want to find little Timmy, he was out in the back shooting pucks, right? Never had to ask him once. Totally hands off. Just let the kid be a kid, right? And what I'm hearing from you is not the other extreme. It's more of a hybrid, right? Where it's like, well, yeah, I wanted it, but my dad also pushed and was hands-on and gave me drills and videotaped and did all that. What do you think about, the height can come later, right? Can the self-directed come later, or do you have it or you don't?
I think that there is some self-direction. I mean, there not. I mean, we'll go to, I guess, in terms of work ethic. I mean, there were four guys out of Winnipeg who made the NHL who were not even making the AAA team. They were always, but they just like played hard, kept at it, and they didn't have much skill, and they found a way through. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth because like even then I look at some people. Some people don't have the pressure on them, and they just have a, you know, innate attributes to just kind of be calm and enjoy themselves, and maybe that's what drives them. So you never know what's driving people, and then also you never know if that dad who's saying that, oh, Timmy's self-directed, is full of shit. He could definitely be full of shit.
Well, people do say a lot of things around the rinks.
Yeah, people. I wouldn't trust. I don't trust what anybody says about most things when it's like an N of one anecdotal thing. But I don't know. Self drive is good. There is something. There is something to instilling a process. You know, the greatest. I wouldn't say the greatest. I guess I shouldn't speak like that. But a huge. You know, looking into the future, you can tell if somebody's going to develop depression or not if they have a goal-oriented mindset or a process-oriented mindset. And if you, so to say process is, you're most likely going to have a healthier mindset throughout everything. So probably that's better. That's the best thing to develop.
Wait, that sounds like an important point. I didn't really catch it. I want to make sure I understand it. So you said that, so is someone that has a process that affects whether they'll develop depression one way or another? That's an indicator of potential for developing depression.
Well, it's a huge buffer against depression is being process. Yes.
Yeah.
Versus being
so that way if you get into a dark place, it's like the process will keep the train on the tracks kind of thing. Is that the thought?
I think you just don't get as anxious or worried because you're not worried about the outcome and you're just kind of enjoying yourself in the moment. And so if you're process oriented, you're not going to develop those issues. Yeah.
It reminds me a bit of blackjack, where it's like if you don't know what the book says, then it's like you stress about any individual hand, right? But if you're really well versed on what the book says and you're just committed philosophically to following the book, then you don't have to think. It's like, well, I'm just going to follow the book and I'm not going to worry about if I win or I lose, because over time, if I follow the book, that gives me the best probability of long-term success.
Yeah, and hard for human minds to stay along those lines, but yeah,
exactly. It's easy to say,
right? But
in the moment, yeah, when the flame gets turned up, right? It's harder to toe that line. So, I mean, another thing you hear around the ranks is the odds are so stacked against you. If anyone thinks their kid's going to end up in the show, like, you might as well just quit the game now, because that's incredibly unhealthy. Like, you do it for the love, you do it for long-term habits, but like, no one you know is going to end up in the show, right? And if you had that mindset, and granted, you had some success stories to point to that happened to, be blood relatives and who you spent a lot of time with in the rinks and otherwise, but if you had that mindset, like, would you have ever ended up in the show? Like, what do you think about that line of thought, and what would you say to those people?
I mean,
and maybe you agree with them. I don't know.
No, I mean, somebody has to end up there. There's people there. So, I mean, most difficult things in life are going to be, the statistical probability is going to be low. I mean, there's going to be a huge filter to get there, but so doesn't matter the probability if you think that. I mean, if you think you can work hard and you have some talent, and I mean, you might as well go for it. I mean, it's kind of like anything worth achieving is quite difficult. So. Might as well do it. And then at the same time, I don't know. I mean, if people want to use that probability more as a process-oriented mind thought. I'm just bringing that up again because it sounded as though you're the people who are saying that are also saying just enjoy it because you're not going to make it. I mean, I don't know if you should have the impetus of that, but it still, maybe if you just enjoy yourself in the moment and whatever happens, that's fine. But I don't know. I was 8 and thinking I would make it, so. I don't know if maybe that's just arrogance, and yeah.
And was it clear relative to others at the time? Like, did you stand out in those early years?
I stood out, but I mean, I stood out in Winnipeg, which actually it's crazy because as much our age group, I think within my age group plus 5 years, minus 5 years, that spread a lot of guys in the NHL made it to the NHL. But so yeah, kind of hard to say.
Remind me, Colin. So you've got, is it one kid today.
One kid today. Yes.
Uh-huh. And it's little girl, if I
Little
remember.
girl, 2-year-old. Yeah.
2-year-old. And with the benefit of hindsight, I know your little girl is, well, maybe she's ready for skates soon. I don't know. It sounds like you were on skates not too older than she is now. But what is your advice to parents in terms of the health, the Goldilocks balance, right? Like of pressure, like enough but not too much.
I think I'll have a better answer for you in 4 or 5 years. I'm looking towards, again, what I described to you. If I would have had a better like I watched the best player, like Drew Doughty had a process oriented mindset. The guy could just go out there and play, and he enjoyed himself. And I mean, he had a ton of talent. But I think just instilling that mindset, always being balanced. Life is challenging, just all those things. I don't think I would push much. Like I would never be like, hey, go grab, if she's going to be a hockey player, I'd never be like, hey, go grab your stick, we're going outside. I would just kind of be like, hey, you want to play, ask stuff like that. Like, I mean, but, with all that being said, I also don't know how I'll be if I start getting attached to.
And for the record, I've seen a lot of people with little kids judge the hockey parents with older kids and then become them.
Yes.
So I'm just going to put that out there.
That's why well, you spoke, I guess you're most likely going to have Matt Calvert on. It's funny. He's the guy who told me, he's like, man, it's crazy. All of a sudden I'm watching my kid's game and I'm starting to get like emotional seeing.
He's in it. Yeah, I know. Like
so,
he's like the ghost of Christmas future for you, I feel.
Yes. So I will not. That's why in 4 or 5 years I'll have a better answer and a more honest answer.
Another thing that's on my mind is there's a lot of talk about nature versus nurture, right? How much of it is the fact that you have the genetics of being a third generation NHLer, right? And how much of it is the nurture of the fact that you grew up in a household with a dad who is an NHLer. And then I also wonder about physical nature versus nurture, and then mental nature versus nurture, right? Because there's a lot of talk too about, well, some kids like, oh yeah, they didn't have the physical attributes, but man, their level of compete is off the charts. Like no one has the grit that kid has, or, like that kid just won't lose, right? And so I guess, how do you think about nature versus nurture, and how do you think about it physically and mentally?
Yeah, I mean, kind of exactly what you described. I mean, I'm very lucky to get the height and the build that I got. I didn't choose those things. They were just given to me. I mean, with that being said, I worked hard, but even then you could argue, I mean, this is almost like a Sam Harris talk on free will, but I didn't choose my mentality, even if it was instilled by me by my experiences or my dad. I didn't choose those either. I mean, it's great that I have those, but I can't necessarily break it down to I chose to work that hard. But I mean, with that being said, getting out of the free will talk, I do remember, I mean, being in college and just being like, well, I want to make the NHL, and if as soon as the last guy leaves I'm going to stay out there until the next person leaves the ice, and then I'm going to stay 30 minutes longer and work on more. So I mean, like, as much as I did get the build and a lot given to me genetically, I knew that I could just try to outwork other people. And that was just my mindset. And, my dad obviously wasn't in the stands in college telling me what to do. I just wanted to do that and knew I could control it. But I mean, with that being said, it got a little obsessive, but worked out.
And at what point do you feel like you took the reins? How old were you?
I mean, I was 15 when I took the reins. But even then, I mean, I wanted to be out there. I mean, I remember being all excited. We had a pond in the back we moved to a new house, and I had a pond in the back from around 12. And I just remember always, like, I wanted to set my alarm before school so I could go out there and get an hour and a half of shooting in and skating before. So I don't know. I took the reins. I always had the reins, but then I remember when I made the U.S. national team, my dad kind of like let off on everything, and just, when he watched my game, it was substantially less critical, more of like an encouragement. He kind of felt like, I had it instilled with me to know whether or not I had a bad or a good game and that I could drive myself. But that was, yeah, so that was around 15.
Uh-huh. And I know from our prior chat and from some homework that I did that you had quite a long career in the NHL, and then so did you? Was the injury a sudden thing, right? Because it was an injury that ultimately led you to retire.
Hmm. It was, no, I mean, it's weird. I mean, I dealt with hip and groin pain my whole, on it since I was like 17, maybe because I was going a little too hard at things. But around, yeah, so in that last year, I just, I had played a back-to-back game and I went out to practice and I literally couldn't take a stride, like both of my hips. Like I couldn't stride. So tried rehabbing it for 2 months, couldn't come back. So finally got surgery, but the surgery didn't take. So I couldn't, there was like a year there where I wasn't able to walk more than a block, let alone skate. So had to get them redone. And yeah, by the time I was meant to come back for playoffs, had the surgeries gone the way they were meant to go, but instead I had to get revision surgeries, and that was the end of the career.
Uh-huh. And obviously there's a lot of time in between and stories and experience and learnings and lessons that there's no way we're going to cover in one show. But hockey was obviously such a huge part of your identity when you left the game. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask. It's like I want to understand the transition from being hockey being your identity to then finding your identity away from the game. And I've read some of the stuff you've wrote. So I mean, don't rehash anything you don't want to rehash. But what did that process look like for you, and what have you observed from other friends and colleagues and teammates that have gone through that similar transition? I would imagine it's a really hard one.
Yeah, the transition, I mean, mine had a very weird feel to it because I retired during COVID and I had 4 hip surgeries. So I had a lot. It was almost, I was worried about my hips, and also the whole global pandemic thing. So it almost wasn't like a clear cutoff. And I'm starting to feel it in the last year or two, where I think the identity thing is starting to play a role, because all of a sudden I think about it, I'm like, oh, I haven't played an NHL game in 5 years. I thought I'm a newly retired NHL player, but really now I'm starting to be quite removed from the game, and that's where I'm actually having a little bit more difficulty lately. And I really enjoy school, so going back and getting my undergrad degree at Boston University and now finishing up my master's at NYU, I really enjoyed that. But now I'm having to get into the real world, either get a job or really figure out what I want to do, and that is quite difficult. And I know a lot of guys have this issue because I don't know if there is or would be a similar feeling to scoring a goal in playoffs in front of 20,000 people. Like it really, that's
Coming on this podcast, it's like
it's a close
around
second.
the same, right?
Second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of that transition, the professional transition, it's difficult. Yeah, it's just difficult finding those. Yeah, it's not. There's not as the highs and lows aren't as quick.
And now that you're away from the game, I would imagine that there was a whole lot of sacrifice. So the game gave you so much, but like anything in life, if you lean so hard into one thing, it may be at the expense of other things. Do you look back with any regret about things you might have missed along the way or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say. I mean, if I could have done less drugs, it would have been great. If I end up getting, I don't know, because not everybody listening, I obviously I got sober, which actually was another part of the transition. Played my last year, and I just gotten sober, so retiring was a whole other thing. I mean, I wish, again, I as much as I don't want to keep hitting that same thing with process mentality, I wish I would have been a little bit kinder to myself with all that. I don't know. I still think I battled pretty hard through what I was going through, like the whole obsessive compulsive disorder thing, where I was retying my skates multiple times. So I wish I would have gotten help a little bit sooner, which had been, there. Like, the hand had been there for help, and I just never really took it and decided to kind of try to take it on my own. So, wish I would have done that. But I also know the challenging spot where you don't know who to trust, and if your team's going to find out, and what would that look like if you took time off, especially 10 years ago when it wasn't as acceptable. So I have regrets, but I also feel as though I just certainly was doing the best with the hand that was dealt. So
But I mean, those are regrets, but it's a little different than what I was getting at. I mean, you're talking about regrets for how you carried yourself as you went through the game. I was asking more about if you regretted how much you gave to the game, but it sounds like that answer is no.
I don't know. It's hard to say because at the same time, like I am dealing with the physical consequences. Actually, like my hips still aren't. People ask me to go play. Can you come play in a pickup league? And I'm like, no, my hips literally can't do it. And so I'm, dealing with some disability, type things that I didn't expect to be dealing with, and I do wish that wasn't the hand that I was dealt, but it is. So I gave a lot to it. I certainly feel as though my mind is a little cooked from it, a little bit. I mean, I have a different constitution. I can't speak for all players, but I just had a different constitution where I really feel as though I burned through a lot of stress, and I do feel the other side of that. So I don't know. I'm sure I would still do it all again. So I don't know what else I would be, what else I would have done during my 20s during that time. So I gave a lot to it, but I got a lot out of it.
So I'm going to ask this question, although I understand that you won't really be able to answer one part of it until your daughter gets older, and also who knows if she'll be a hockey girl or what she'll be into. But it seems that the game certainly changed a lot from my perspective from when I played growing up, and so I'm just interested from what you've observed. How is the development path different today, and what's good about that, and what are some negative consequences for the changes?
I mean, I guess back home, I'll just refer. I was incredibly sad to learn that this new team, this new traveling team, had developed called. It's a group called At the Rink. I forget what it's called, but it's like a $25,000 a year program, maybe $30,000 a year program, and like that's you want a player not to make the next step because, or not necessarily, you want a player to make the next level because of his abilities, not his ability to pay for it. And but when I grew up, it was still expensive. $4,000, $3,000 or $4,000 a year to be on that traveling team. But and there was people of all social classes able to play on that top team, and so it makes me sad that people's development is getting priced out, and so yeah, and I mean you kind of start seeing that across a few different social, there's some social issues, obviously inequality. I won't be a preacher there, but so yeah, I don't know. It's too bad, but I mean at the same time, on the positive side of things, I mean, has anybody, and this isn't because of their wealth, but have you ever seen anybody move like McDavid or McCarr or McKinnon before? Like, nope. And so even though these people are now hiring skating coaches, these guys are just moving in a way that nobody's ever seen, and it goes to show you that what can happen when you start getting those reps in. I should also throw Eichel in there because man, it's fun to watch him skate as it looks like he's not trying, and then he's just by people. So yeah, those are kind of things.
He's a Boston guy, right, Eichel?
Yeah, he's a Boston BU guy. Yeah.
One thing that I mean, my oldest is 13, and so I'm kind of feeling my way in the dark as we go through the path. But one thing I've observed is that if you actually want to make a run at even playing in college, let alone beyond college, that you have to be so old. Because now it's like you're probably going to reclass somewhere in the high school experience, and then you'll play at least a year of juniors, if not 2 or 3. And I mean, even in Division III, it seems like a lot of these kids are coming in as 21-year-old freshmen, when if you look to your left or your right, everyone else is 18. What do you think about that?
That would be news to me, but I will digest it. um, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's causing that in the competitive landscape, but I think, I mean, it seemed like there was more and more 21-year-old freshmen coming in. And I mean, at the same time, if you want to play college hockey and you're not there yet at 18 and you do have the drive to want to play, I mean, I guess why not continue to develop if that's what you want to do? But I mean, that's, more time and money spent. But I mean, at the same time, you look at somebody like Matt Gilroy, who made it and then made the NHL, played for the Rangers. It can be done. So I guess I don't know the incentives for that or what's going on, but interesting development.
All right. Well, maybe we should talk about some of the development stuff because, as I think I mentioned to you in our last discussion, one of the things that I've observed is that, I mean, just as a dad, that especially as you play it more, as your kid plays at more competitive levels, that they're doing a lot outside of the structured stuff with the team. And a lot of that development is self-paced with the kid and family. And maybe it's different in different regions too. That's another thing. Like, I want to talk to people from Minnesota and from Texas and from different parts of Europe. And I mean, I'm interested in really understanding the different development models. So I can only speak to what's happening in New England. But here in New England, you end up carting your kid around to a bunch of these different skills, and it's pretty fragmented. It's a lot of time in the car. It's expensive. It prices a lot of people out, as you were saying. And there's a bit of kind of FOMO in keeping up with the Joneses, where you see everyone doing the skills, doing the tournament teams, doing year round, doing right, and it's like you kind of have to be pretty disciplined to say, well, we're going to pull back or we're going to abstain because the best interest of my kid, I don't want to burn my kid out from the game, and in the best interest of his long-term development, I don't want him to get overused injuries, right? I want him to have fun and be a kid, right? Whatever it is, getting sucked into the vortex with no boundaries is a slippery slope, right? So there's that, right? But then there's also the fact that a lot of the stuff you're carting your kid around for, there's things you could be doing at home to complement in between and to mean potentially less wear and tear dragging them around to all this stuff. And then there's a bunch of people who either can't afford it, don't have the job logistics to be human Uber drivers, or live in areas that don't have the same density of all this stuff that we have here in the Boston area, right? And so if you built a digital platform that could, some stuff, it's going to have to be in person, right? But for the stuff that doesn't have to be in person, like Hockey IQ, does Hockey IQ need to be in person? Does mental fit, sports psychology, mental fitness, does that need to be in person? Someone standing over you, making sure that you do your shots or giving you guidance on your stick handling form or something. Like, I'm not even sure what the stuff is, but could you build a platform that could, one, drive better adherence at home, and two, be kind of your partner for development over time that could open up the accessibility of the best development stuff to more people, right? So that's some of the stuff I've been thinking about, but I'm treading carefully because, I don't want to be part of the problem, honestly. And that's one of the reasons I'm not rushing to build. I am spending time steeping in the game and talking to a wide range of perspectives and learning from people like you, so that whatever we end up building here, it ends up being something we can be proud of and that really helps kids and families and is in their best interest for their short and long-term development. So I'll stop there, but it'd be great to just kind of get your reaction to that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how much... I mean, this is just off the top of my head, but all of a sudden I think, I had a lot of those things at home because I had a dad who played in the NHL and a grandfather who was...
And look at the rosters. Maybe most is an exaggeration. This is just me making excuses. But if you look at the D1 rosters, right? How many last names do you recognize from their dad? A lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you are able to all of a sudden you, as opposed to just having one person having that accessibility, you're having more people who have accessibility from the comfort of their home. That certainly levels the playing field. Obviously, I didn't have to pay my dad to to do any of that. But at the same time, I think my understanding of where the game's at, yeah, like you said, it's people get priced out. So I mean, the ability to do something at home at a a more affordable cost seems like the direction that it's headed. You talk about like sports psychologist, or you want a nutritionist, or you want, some. I mean, like I think that there was an IPO that was for an online PT this year in America.
Oh yeah, I forget the name of it, but I remember seeing that.
So I mean, I'd have to assume you can get the training you need, the PT you need, and a sports psychologist all from your home, and that way you're not as burned out. And then at the same time, while not necessarily on a platform, cross training is a very advantageous thing to do. I went out I went out for the summer to my cottage growing up, and it was volleyball, badminton, and wakeboarding. So there's a lot of movement and a lot of jumping. So always.
It's another trend we didn't talk about is the year-rounders. There's always something in the keeping up with the Joneses, and you feel like you can't put it down. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, again, I wasn't there. I remember my parents. I would just have like one or two tournaments, summer tournaments. I feel like, and even then, and that was the beginning of it. So I can only imagine, 20, I guess more than 20, probably 25 years later, how it is. I don't know. The FOMO thing is hard. We'll see. I mean, I'm watching my daughter climb at the playground, and I'm like, oh, does she need more reps in? So I can see the insecurities, and it's so hard not to, you want to give your kid the best opportunity. You want them to have every opportunity to develop, but I don't know. Somebody who you could talk offline as well, but Jay Harrison, who's, he turned into a PhD after playing over a decade in the NHL, but he's a huge advocate for cross training in the summers, just having a different sport to play. You're getting better, but you're actually enjoying getting better. And the kid, we could send some data to the parents to make them feel better about that.
It is. I mean, it's tricky, right? Because rationally, if you focus on anything too much, you're going to get sick of it, right? But at the same time, the game has gotten so competitive, right, that you don't want your kid to fall behind, right? You don't want to be the kid that gets cut from that team like you did when you were, vying for that 15 to 17 or whatever it is, and you're keeping up with, and you're trying to keep up with kids that are year-rounders. So they're going to come back the next year after a year of grind, and in the short term, it'll look like you're falling behind when a lot of those kids are going to burn out or get overuse injuries or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's a difficult, and it's difficult, and I'm having to think about this a lot, and this conversation brings it up more. But yeah, no, it's a difficult.
Wait till your daughter gets over it.
No, I know.
Yeah.
No, so I don't know. I mean, you do. I don't know. Yeah, if you want your kids to get into the best colleges, I mean, you probably have to push them and get them the best programs. I mean, it's unless they're born like Goodwill Hunting. So it's a difficult. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the balance is. You have to work hard. So we'll see.
Yeah, and the conventional wisdom is like if little Timmy's not in the back shooting pucks on his own, like not going to make it, right? And like I don't buy that, right? I think, look, if you're dragging little Timmy and little Timmy's like, come on, I hate this. Why are you making me go? That's one thing, right? But like, I see lots of kids where it's like, they love the game. Like even my kid, he loves the game. You drag him around to the formal stuff, wagging his tail, dialed in, clearly wants to get better, right? But then when he gets home, like, he's not thinking about like, I want to get better. He's like, thinking about where's my phone? Where's Xbox, right? How's my fantasy sports team doing, right? But then he's so competitive when you dial, when you do the formal stuff. But then if the doorbell rings and it's a buddy saying you want to shoot pucks, he'll go shoot 500 pucks, right? And they'll play posts and they'll compete and they'll have a blast, right? And so it's like, well, is there something in between? Like, can you somehow recreate that buddy feeling when there's not a buddy there, even if it's remote? Compete against buddies that are in their houses down the street, with an iPad, seeing them on the screen or something. Like that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about. But I go back and forth honestly, because on the one hand, it's like, well, yeah, if you package it in that way, then you'll make it fun, and then there'll be better adherence. And on the other, it's like, well, like, are you just trying to put lipstick on a pig?
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, if it's the if it's the communal, I mean, like when somebody's playing Xbox, I assume that they're also playing online with their friends. So, I mean, if you're going to create a programming where you and your friends are getting involved in a game, and you can also, I mean, why wouldn't you just do it in hockey where you're both playing posts or something like that? I mean, makes sense to me.
That's the code I'm trying to crack. Like, I know what code I'm trying to crack, which is like through, and it's going to be different for different kids. Some kids are, because I built a running platform, and with like a digital platform for runners globally, and some runners, they locked down all their privacy settings. They didn't share anything because they didn't care if anyone saw it. They didn't want anyone to see it. They just cared about their own progress over time, right? And then others were like, I want everyone to see it because knowing that people are going to see it's what's motivating me to do my best because I want the props, right? And then other people are like, neither of those. I'm kind of in neither of those camps, but I just want to be told what to do. I want a plan, right? And other people are like, I want it to be more like a game. Can it be a challenge? Like, can I unlock that badge that I never got before, right? I'm really trying to get that one because it's like, fills out my square or whatever, right? So it's like different motivations for different people, but if you have them all, you can kind of purpose built it, each individual's experience for the stuff that's going to motivate them. Why couldn't you do that with skills training, right? And also, like, what I see is that, the pros have a bunch of handlers, right? That void is starting to get, and I'm early in my journey, so everything is like, well, this is what I'm observing going in, but I need to pressure test and validate. And you might tell me that I have a wrong assumption, which I'm sure I have wrong assumptions, and listeners too, like, I want to hear about them. But like, what I observe is that now people coming up, right, it's getting to a point where agents are playing more of a role, right? And actually they're serving a valuable purpose in terms of helping them navigate some of the politics. And so it's not daddy, calling who can't be objective, right? But also the agents are building up now development arms, right? To watch the video and give you feedback and make sure you're on track and give you plans. But most kids don't have access to agents or to handlers, right? So what do they have? They have dad, right? Or mom, right? And the problem with dad or mom, unless they happen to be former NHLers, is that they don't know what they're doing, right? And the other problem with dad or mom is that they're a blood relative, and who the heck wants to learn from dad or mom, right? And the last problem is that they don't have time, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. Is like, all right, well, my kid is telling me he wants to dial up the training in the house, right? But he needs structure. So I can scramble and try to provide the structure, but it's exhausting. He doesn't want to learn from dad, and I don't do it for a living, and there's people that do it far better than me. And so, like, could I just outsource it to a platform full of experts, right, that can give them the best, right, not coming from dad in a way that liberates me, right, and, oh, by the way, opens up those experts at a price point that's much more affordable for everyone that, like, can't go open their wallet and get a bunch of handlers because that's obscene, and who can do that, right? So that's it's super vague because I don't have any of the details worked out, but that's like the hypothesis within which I want to start experimenting.
Yeah, no, and I found it interesting actually because you had said that there was some college athletes who were helping to mentor, younger kids, which is like like when I spoke to, when I spoke to you previously, or when I spoke to one of my friends, they had said, okay, well, how many experts can there be? But I mean, once you start looking at the different levels of hockey, there are quite a few experts who can offer their expertise. A college level player actually knows a heck of a lot and can help out a younger kid. And at the same time, you're talking about agents. It'd be nice for an agent to be able to just be an agent and not have to break down a kid's film, where he can then outsource it, be like, hey, we have a subscription to this platform. This is going to break down your film and get you in touch with an expert who can help you. So I think that, yeah, it's very, there's a few interesting value propositions there.
Yeah, and I mean, there are sites popping up where they can review your shifts, and there are sites popping up where they pair you with current D1 players for mentors, and there are sites popping up where you can get access to sports psychology sessions on Zoom or whatever, and there are sites popping up that give you drills to do, right? But one, like, why do I have to go to all these different places for all these different things, right? Two, I feel like there's a lot of great stuff in the hockey world, but there's not a lot of true consumer technology platform DNA, right? Like people that have really built companies with, starting with the consumer first and building great, intuitive, easy to use experiences. And then three, AI is going to change a lot of things, right? And it's going to be able to make, drive a lot more personalization, strip out a bunch of the costs, and make the price point even more accessible to more people. And one other interesting thing I've observed is that every region has their own skills experts, right? And all that stuff is still going to exist. There's going to be huge demand for it, but matchmaking is hard, right? And so if you built in a growing community of players globally, right, then you could be a referral source for all the regional in-person stuff so that people can graduate or complement the digital with the in-person, or it's more complement the in-person with the digital, because the digital is going to be thin and lightweight relative to the stuff you're doing in person. In-person is still going to rule the day, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and a little bit like B2B referrals, a little bit regional to regional, or is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if you have the digital platform that has people everywhere and you don't do anything in person, then whatever region that person is in, when they want in-person stuff, you should be able to connect them with the right partner to serve their needs, and be really careful about curating and making matches that make sense to both sides.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Matchmaking is always difficult.
Yeah, what else was I going to say? And the other thing that Matt told me, and he's going to come on the show and talk about it, but Matt was saying how he's observed that there's a lot of players out there, NHL players, who leave the game, and maybe they have young kids and can't handle the travel grind anymore, or their bodies are failing them or whatever, but they still love the game and they want to be a part of it, but they want flexibility, they want to work from anywhere, and they want to be a part of the game. And so maybe there's a way to provide a platform like this and essentially curate this army of world-class expertise and give them essentially fractional work, right? That they can do from anywhere on their own schedule, almost like an Uber driver. You can turn on the clock whenever you feel like it, or don't when you don't, right? And then enable all these kids to get access, directly to their heroes. I mean, that's another angle.
So you mentioned it offline, and now that makes very good sense. Like, that's great. Yes, no, that's very cool. I mean, I would, as a retired player, if I could, 2 hours a day, I have 2 sessions a day where I'm helping one kid with his, I guess I would be like more mentor based with his career, and another I'm helping with his shot. That'd be a pretty, great day and a way to stay involved in the game. So I think that has a lot of legs. You would actually have a lot of former NHLers and professional hockey players who would be, willing to lend their time to that.
Well, anyways, I have no answers. I'm not in a rush to build. Just trying to keep in the game and learn. But those are my that's a point in time snapshot of where my head is. So I have to turn things around and ask where your head is, Colin. Like, now that you're a few years out of the game, you said it's been 5 years since you played your last game. Path to sobriety. Where do you find yourself now, and what do you want to do?
Yeah. Well, found myself. So just graduating from NYU with a master's in global affairs, concentrating on global economics. Currently writing my thesis on open source AI from a geopolitical and business model perspective versus closed source. And
you think you're the first hockey player to ever do that? I would venture that that's a pretty safe bet.
Probably. Yeah. Found myself in an interesting position post hockey. But so doing that, actually just now doing my second internship, kind of feeling my way into, I don't know, corporate life, but this one is a little bit more startup, which is like very fun. Having a team, trying to start something new, where we've been a nonprofit giving non-dilutive capital grant money to startups, and now we want to get into the venture arm. So helping kind of develop the deck, the filtration process, how we present it, market it, finding LPs. It's been very fun, rewarding, and that's where I find myself. And I don't know, maybe I'll continue down this path. I like impact investing. I should say this is an impact investing fund. So, helping with social mobility and inequality and businesses, underserved or allowing underserved communities to gain access to healthcare, to financial needs, to climate adaptation. So I'm a big fan of that type of stuff, kind of correctly allocating capital. So we'll see where it takes me. I may not do anything corporate and might just go work in sobriety or something like that. But that's kind of the plan at the moment.
And what are your thoughts? What's your current involvement with the game, and what are your thoughts looking forward in terms of what you want that involvement to be, if anything?
My current involvement is waking up in the morning and checking the box score of Edmonton versus Florida to see who won the game. I tried. Those games are late. So no, I mean I love it. I still follow. I love watching highlights. My involvement in the game is I always get excited to talk about hockey, and I always get excited talking to my old buddies who played. So it was something I never saw for myself professionally, but at the same time, I kind of spoke of it before. As much as I'm getting degrees, I feel like I have a PhD in hockey with a heck of a lot of experience. I mean, I found early on in my non-hockey professional career that I could get coffee dates, but not very many job offers, which leads me to the hockey path. So I don't know. I'm keeping it open. It wasn't a thought at all until recently. So we will see.
I guess my last question for you is when I talk to parents who have older kids that have been through the journey, right? If I talk to ones whose kids thrived, right, then they're focused on with their younger one is, assuming the younger one wants it, right, but is that development path and striving and ambition and goals and structure and all the stuff we're talking about, right? When I talk to ones who have older siblings who maybe went through some turbulence on the way, right? It becomes a perspective check for that family, and they're a lot more grounded where it's like, yo, like as long as my kid is healthy and happy, like I'm good and anything else is gravy, right? And I would imagine it's similar. I mean, even for us grown-ups, if we have like a health scare or a family member that dies suddenly, or like life's a bitch, right? And I think about that just as a dad and as a human when I try to live my life, right? Balancing that constant, incessant, insatiable ambition with enjoying the here and now, and it oftentimes feels like they're at odds. So I'm just curious, especially since I know you've been through a lot, like, and you've also achieved a lot, right? How do you think about that balance, if at all?
I think about it every day, especially moving into this new career where I find myself being ambitious, but at the same time, I feel myself developing similar tendencies of like too much attachment, to my work. I love it. I love it when my current boss is like, "Hey, you did a great job," and I'm a bit of a validation monster. So, but at the same time, like having being in sobriety as well as just you start growing up and you start seeing I mean if you age it's you're very lucky, not everybody gets to age, not every people have health scares, and I think I find myself more on the lines of happy and healthy, happy if somebody's especially with my daughter, I'd say happy, healthy, and productive. I do like the idea of her also being productive and contributing to the community. So I don't know. I certainly am always trying to balance it. I think I try to be here and now, do a lot of stuff to, implement that into my day, but I'm not the Buddha yet, so I have a lot of work to do. But yeah, that's certainly a balance I'll be striking for the rest of my life.
I'm curious to check back in a few years and watch you like wild-eyed on the bench coaching your daughter's brick team.
I know.
That's what I envision.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this was so useful to me, and I'm sure for listeners too. For anyone listening that's inspired by your story, because look, you're so accomplished, but you're also just such a nice, humble, down-to-earth guy, and seems like you're really smart because you're like doing stuff that I could never do in terms of your studies. So give a pitch to listeners for like who do you want to hear from, and from a professional standpoint, and what kind of roles would be interesting for you so that you can hopefully get some surprise and delight in terms of inbounds.
For my professional career moving forward, what would I would like?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I don't care if it has to do with hockey or not. Just what do you want to do?
Yeah. I mean, again, kind of along those same lines. I quite enjoy the idea of impact capital.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy, I move back and forth between being, wanting to be in kind of like a grant making process. I'm a big believer and a big fan of, the America's R&D system, as well as the venture capital system, and how it just breeds these new technologies. So anything in that space, whether grant making or venture capital, I don't know if I would move into like growth equity, private equity type deals, but I'm interested in those types of things, policy as well, kind of like the way they all mesh together, or political economy. Big fan of political economy. So all those things, all the above. So that'd be my pitch. If anybody needs somebody for that, let me know.
And what advice would you have for me heading out to try to build a platform to help kids on their development path, starting in hockey and ultimately in other sports, given that I want to build a successful business, but I wanted to have an important mission and do good in the world for the kids and the families and not just be another hand in the wallet. So I think given all of that, what advice would you have? And if you feel like the advice is, don't build that freaking thing, like I want to hear that too, honestly.
No, I mean, my advice when you're already doing it is to speak to a bunch of hockey guys and guys that are in, somebody like Calvert who has kids in the sport. Like, I mean, just,
I can't wait for that one. That's going
yeah,
to be a really great episode.
he's one of
Yeah.
my favorite teammates I played with. We also grew up playing against each other as kids. Um, I think you're just going to get such diverse perspectives, and like even the things that you mentioned, like me and him had a conversation about, your platform, and we had a bunch of ideas flying around, and this is one I hadn't heard of, and this is kind of what happens when you have a lot of people who know the game kind of putting their minds together. So it seems like you're reaching out to a bunch of people. You've built more apps and had more acquisitions than me, so I'll leave you to that.
All right. Well, I'll keep you posted. Maybe there'll be a way to trick you into getting involved in some way, but I don't even know what I'm building yet, so I have no asks. But yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Looking forward to keeping in touch and to seeing where you land, because I'm sure it's going to be doing something exciting and impactful.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Colin.